Welcome back to the Peruvian Waltz podcast. I am your host, the Peruvian Waltz logo, and I'm joining you here from Lima, Peru. I couldn't get my camera working for some reason. I don't want to use this as an excuse because I even wanted to show my new haircut here, but for some reason I messed around the settings. I unplugged it and plugged it back in, and for some reason my camera is just not working. So you're gonna have to stare at that Peruvian Waltz logo for whenever I speak. But luckily, Peter Galindo, who is the only guest joining me today, is with his camera working. So you do have a face to stare at. So, yeah. Well, how are you, Peter?
I'm good, and I apologize that I am the only face that you have to look at. That's probably not a pretty picture for everybody, but hopefully you can, it will be made up to you with some pretty in-depth conversation, which Brian and I were already starting off the air. So safe to say we're raring to go.
Indeed. Now, I guess let's just get straight into it. I guess we could start with the let's start with the bad part out of the way first, in the more recent game before we go talk about something more positive. So let's talk about the Peru versus USA game. Now, first of all, this is part of the first game where it was like half and half in a long time. By that I mean like it's a half Peruvian fans, half USA fans, but the Peruvian fans still outsung the USA fans. It was actually kind of funny because before the game, the speaker was going USA, and the only thing heard in the stadium was Peru. It was really funny. It was embarrassing for that speaker, the speaker. But the game was just a mess overall. But in my opinion, it was a much needed result because that's what friendlies are for. I mean, Peter, last month you mentioned that playing against quality sides is a good thing because if you do poorly, you get punished and you learn from it, which is true. But this USA side was not strong at all. I mean, it's got some talent for sure for the future. But it was a young side that even our second string team should not be drawing to, and we should have probably lost it. To be honest, it was an awful performance. It was near result, and I think Gareca was smart placing that second string team to see who stays and who goes to the Copa America. So kind of what I asked for, but also kind of not what I asked for because I wanted to see new faces. But at the same time, we needed to experiment at some point. So what do you think of this match, Peter?
Well, I don't think it was actually as bad as everybody's making it out to be. I mean, I was unfortunately busy the night of the game. I was covering Canada, my birth nation. 5-0 win, by the way, over Dominica. Huge result. But I digress. So I got home that night and I watched the game back, having seen tweets from people on my timeline and just reading reaction in the Peruvian news. And I kind of thought to myself, having seen the score and the fact that the USA took the lead, that it was going to be a pretty drab match. But I watch it, and yes, there were 6 changes made, and you could definitely see that at least at the beginning of the match and at the beginning of the second half, that the cohesion wasn't there, which is understandable given the amount of changes made by Ricardo Gareca, which was a huge surprise, by the way. That it was going to always be a bit of a struggle, especially because the U.S. was not expected to be on the front foot. So it was kind of always up to Peru to basically live up to the favorites tag and to cruise to victory, essentially. I have no doubt in my mind that if this was a regular 11, Peru would have probably dominated and probably should have ended up winning by a couple goals, which I believe I predicted last week. But considering the amount of changes made, I really don't think it was that poor. Yes, there were mistakes made. Nilson Loyola was a bit of a turnstile at left back. I mean, what else is new? He's done it with Melgar on the big stage in Copa Libertadores, and then again with Peru here. Alexander Cayens had to basically help cover him, and therefore there was a huge gaping hole in the middle of the defense, which Kellen Acosta really should have taken advantage of. I believe it was in somewhere around like the 8th or 9th minute, but shot it wide instead. Christian Ramos losing Josh Sargent on the set piece at the beginning of the second half wasn't great. But you could see that the communication and the chemistry wasn't there, and as a result, the team just wasn't completely at the highest level. And I think that people making snap conclusions of, oh, this player isn't good enough, that player isn't good enough, or this player was really good, that player was really good. You can't really come to a conclusion after 1 or 2 games, especially in a game where so many changes were made and when these players aren't comfortable with each other. Do you expect them to maybe put in a better performance against a team that isn't necessarily great themselves and or cohesive themselves? Probably, but this is still a somewhat inexperienced team, especially when it comes to the national team stage. So I think considering, and maybe we'll go more into specifics when we get into our listener questions, because they had a few specific questions about the players themselves. I don't think it was necessarily that bad, although I will focus on the positive a little bit here and say that Edison Flores, Andy Polo, and Renato Tapia reminded us why, I think, well, at least in the case of Flores and Tapia, reminded us why they are starters in this team, and why we shouldn't maybe necessarily downplay their importance, which I think was kind of happening after the Chile game when it came to Tapia especially.
All right, well, first of all, I want to give a shout out to Viz, who's in the chat. He says, hey, guys. Good day, Viz. How are you? And thanks for stopping by, Viz, by the way. He couldn't make it on the podcast because he was working, but I'm pretty sure that was self-explanatory in most, because it's me and Peter are usually the ones that work throughout the day. I think it's just Michelle that Michelle's the other one that works throughout the day. But anyways, enough rambling. I agree that some people are jumping on the bandwagon too soon. First of all, let's talk about Rui Diaz. Now, we can't really use he's not getting enough service. We can't use he's not getting enough service. He doesn't fit the system excuse much longer, because it's the same story every time. We almost sound like a broken record. But today, I absolutely can excuse him, because he was getting no service whatsoever. And there's nothing he could have done. He was winning. He was even winning a few of his duels as well. So, he was doing what he could. Sure, he wasn't great, but I wouldn't call him. I wouldn't call him out yet. I would wait a few more matches, because, like I said, Peña did not help him at all. Even Hurtado did not help him. The only player who was trying his best to get to him was Andy Polo, who even Flores, I would say, he wasn't getting enough service to Rui Diaz. So today, I can excuse him. And as for Cayens, I agree with you that Cayens not only was he not getting the help from Loyola defensively, but it's also his first match as a starter in the national team in almost 4 years.
Yeah.
So he was after so much pressure of not getting called up. I could imagine he was anxious to impress Careca, and as a result, it just didn't come out as well for him. So I don't think we should jump on the bandwagon too soon. What I do agree with is that Loyola and Peña should not be in the national team anymore. Peña, I've rambled on about a lot before. I've said in this podcast, every time someone brought Peña up as a backup for Yotun, I would always, what's the word for it? I would always just, laugh it off is not the word, but it's basically around that same concept, not take it into consideration, because I had never rated Peña. Even when he was at San Martin, I didn't think he was fantastic. But even his move to Tondela, I wasn't a big fan of. Sure, he wasn't getting game time at Granada, but I think Tondela was too big of a step down, I think. And as for even if he's playing in the Portuguese league, it's not. I mean, you could say what you want about Hurtado playing at Vitória Guimarães, but Vitória Guimarães is the fourth biggest club in Portugal, and they have expectations, even if they're not exactly a strong club anymore. They're behind Braga now. But they're still a club with expectation, and according to the Portuguese, they're the fourth biggest club in the country. And the difference is Hurtado has always been consistent with them. So, and as for Loyola, I don't think anyone can disagree, or better said, I don't think you disagree with me, Peter. Loyola should not be on the team anymore, because he's a farce nowadays. Because honestly, I had some faith in him that Gareca could transform him, and he could play as consistently as he did in the Brazil match, even if he that match he did was a fault that goal, but he wasn't atrocious in that game. But ever since, he's just not been good enough for the Peruvian national team. And this is his worst match, in my opinion. Completely out of position, time and time again. And offensively, he didn't offer anything. He just passed it back. That's all he went up. He went up the wing and never drove forward. So that's my. I'm disappointed in Loyola, but I don't think it should be a surprise. So I think that for next month, we got to look for a new left back. There's not many options, but you got to try someone like Santillan, or I'm trying to remember who the other one was. I'd say even I'm not saying to call him up, because I don't think he's very good, but Cosillo is better than Loyola at this point. Again, I don't think I should call him Cosillo. I'm just criticizing Loyola here. But I would, for the left backs, I would just call someone good up and see what sticks until the Copa America.
Well, I mean, you've already basically answered two of the listener questions with Rui Diaz and the left back situation. So I guess we can maybe I'll say my thoughts for that, just to keep a little intrigue. But
we gotta read the names as well. Don't forget.
Yes, as well. But in terms of the Peña conundrum, let's call it. Look, I don't think he has really the quality to play for the national team. If you can at least compare him to someone like a Tapia, Aquino, Yotun, even the young players coming through like Jairo Concha, Jesus Pretel, maybe even Alexis Arias or Patricio Arce. But he also wasn't really put in the best situation either, because playing in the Yotun role is not his best role at club level, at least since he's been in Europe. Whenever he played with Granada, whenever he played with, or at least now that he is playing with Tondela, he does his best work as the most advanced midfielder in a midfield three. So in this case, at least with Peru, that would be kind of in the Christian Cueva role, or in the role that he occupied against Argentina last October at La Bombonera. Because he's more of a dribbler. He's not really too much of a passer. He likes to create with his technique. So putting him in the Yotun role was a little bit surprising from Gareca. That's why I kind of thought Calcaterra had a bit of a chance to get a start, but maybe he figured because Peña has been a regular call-up, maybe that could bridge some of the gaps in the chemistry, so to say. So I don't think he was put in an ideal situation to begin with, but I don't think he has really the national team quality. That being said, if you were to bring him on in a certain situation, like if you want to lock it down, if you maybe want to add a little more drive in the middle of the pitch, I wouldn't be opposed to that. But I think because we're now in a new cycle and there are some exciting players coming through, especially after these youth tournaments are over in South America to start 2019, it might be time to start looking at those players and giving them an opportunity. And yeah, I mean, agree with everything else, Brian. I guess, I mean, I've pretty much said it all unless you got other stuff to say.
Yeah, no, I think the under-20 tournament has got to be a big lookout for the next March friendlies, and then in the Copa America we see who will co-op. I'm not sure if there's going to be a preliminary list again like there was in the Centenario, but if there is, then that's another chance that they can impress. So we have about I want to say 6-7 matches left before the Copa America, 6-7 friendlies left before it, and that, like I said, if there's a preliminary list, that's even better for us.
Yeah.
So I would like to see Jairo Concha, Alexis Arias, and maybe Patricio Arce, those three, or those three, between those three, anyways. And I think that those are good ideas for call-ups. Now let's talk a little bit about the Chile game, something more positive. Well, first, before we go into the Chile game, I did want to say that the big, not revelation, but the big comeback for me in this international break was Flores.
Yes.
Because he's had a very underwhelming year, it has to be said. Last year he was very good. This year he was poor. In my opinion, his underperformance in the World Cup was what got us knocked out, because he was kind of the missing asset. We needed one of Trauco or Flores to perform, and neither of them did. It was most of that right flank that did, and I think that Flores is. I'm glad to see him back to his best. Now, I still think, well, okay, that would be contradictory if I said that, but I was gonna say he could be better, but no, I think he's getting back to his best. That's a better way to put it. So yeah, and he reminded us what a good player he really is, because he might not be he's technically very good, but I think tactically he is spot on, because he's one of the players that really makes the side click, in my opinion. Maybe that's a bit far, but like I think that when both Advíncula Carrillo are performing, we need one of Trauco or Flores performing. And Trauco's not really cutting the bill right now. I think Flores is the one I have more faith in at the moment, until Trauco at least gets some more playing time, which under Dorival Jr. doesn't look like he's going to get it. So, yeah, I think Flores, I'm excited for Flores at Monarcas, and I hope he does well. What do you think, Peter?
No, I agree with that, although I do think that Flores wasn't the only problem with Peru at the World Cup. I think there were many, many other factors, not just limited to the left side. But in terms of his performance in the two friendlies, because, I mean, I think he actually played really well against Chile as well, assisted the goal for Aquino, the first goal before he came off as a substitute. And then, I mean, he followed up really nicely against the United States, I think. And he was a protagonist for the team. And I think that what you said about Monarcas and how he's kind of getting back to his best, I think the fact that he's in a comfortable environment again, he's a key player at Monarcas, he's getting time, that's really boosted his confidence, because I think he's one of those players who, depending on how he feels mentally, and I guess you could kind of say this with any player, but especially with Flores, how he feels mentally really translates to how he ends up playing on the pitch. Because you saw for that World Cup, for about 3-4 months previous, he wasn't playing a lot with Aalborg. He wasn't in great form. He was injured. He comes into that camp, maybe a little bit rusty. Going onto the big stage like that, he might have been a bit overwhelmed, if not a lot overwhelmed. So maybe he learned some valuable lessons, and the fact that he got the move to a club that I think values him a lot is really going to help him out. And I think what you said about Carrillo or Advíncula, and then obviously one of the left-sided players doing well, really makes Peru click. I think you saw that against Chile, because even though they maybe kind of lost the possession battle, when you got Flores and Advíncula and Carrillo into open space against Chile, oh my God, they were breathtaking to watch. So it's good to see that Flores is, at least at the moment, back in form and potentially getting back to where he was a year ago.
All right, well, back to the Chile friendly. I've already talked about Flores in this past international break. I praised him. Now, as for other praises, Advíncula was superb in that first match. Meh in the second game. It was mediocre in the second game. And I think Yotun has also played really well in these two games here. Like, we criticize him so much for this year, especially you, Peter. Yes. But I think that this match has. I'm so questioning his consistency because of how the whole Lando debacle. But I think this match is definitely a positive, or these two matches have been a positive for him because he was superb in both.
Yes,
and that's really good to see. Aquino, no words really. I think there's not much I need to say. I mean, Tapia has proven in the second match that he's still very much not far behind, if at all, from Aquino. They're probably around the same level, I'd say. Maybe one better than the other, but I'm not sure which one is better than the other. But the point is, they're both very close to each other, and that's very good to have. Two midfielders that are young, and they're around the same age, and they're both very, very good. And one's getting game time, the other one isn't. In fact, Aquino is probably one of the best midfielders in the Mexican league at the moment because, well, statistically, he has the most tackles in the league. I mean, I know stats aren't everything, but he's scoring a few goals. He's growing it into scoring now more than he was when he was at Cristal, more than he was when he was at Lobos. Still kind of ill-disciplined in terms of cards. I'm not talking about like Vidal or Quevedo with discipline. I'm talking about like sometimes his tackles get out of place and he gets carded a lot. But that's the only concern really. But that doesn't seem to be a problem with Peru. Just on a consistent basis with in the Mexican league. But that doesn't take away that he's been very good for Leon. After kind of a shaky start at the club, he's improved a lot. So, yeah. And as for the others, Rui Diaz, I thought, had an okay first game. He did well to get into the box, but that second goal, he really should have scored it. No, not second goal, but that second chance he got where he had an open net and he missed it. I think that was his chance to really silence the critics. But unfortunately, he didn't take it. But like I said, I'm going to cut Rui Diaz some slack because of that second match where he got no service at all. This match, he really only had that one chance. And the previous one was he had two chances, really. But the previous one was more of the goalkeeper's merit than Rui Diaz's miss, in my opinion. So, yeah. And I think that this match, especially the USA one, it wasn't a direct message from Gareca. But from my point of view, it was a way of Gareca saying, you want me to bench Cueva? Well, this is the result. And, yeah, that's all the critics of Cueva for missing that penalty, which was not an easy penalty to score anyways. And I think Cueva really silenced the critics again because he was a lot better this month from when he did play. What do you think, Peter?
Yeah, definitely. I think Cueva, I mean, lost in all the Yotun hype and Flores' kind of return to form. And obviously the duo now known as Carrincula, Carrillo and Advíncula on the right side, was fantastic in the game against Chile. Now, I think part of it had to do with Chile was just, I mean, they were also quite poor, it must be said. They had no cohesion. They looked really like a shell of their former selves. I know it makes sense because they're kind of going through a bit of a rebuild. But Cueva took advantage, and kudos to him. I think because he's now been getting at least a few more minutes here and there with Krasnodar, you're starting to see that he's gaining the match fitness back and that sharpness back. And I mean, he was just spraying through balls all across the final third. It was really fun to see, actually. So I think from that perspective, it was good to see him as well getting back to form, at least temporarily. But I'm sure this will become a more common trend than not. And I think that considering we maybe had a few questions about the defense, specifically in this game, I think obviously against the U.S. for obvious reasons, it wasn't as great. But in this game against Chile, they were actually, I think, very, very solid, save for maybe a 15-minute period to start the second half, right before Peru got the opening goal through Rocco's own goal. Christian Ramos especially, I think he was actually a monster back there. Santa Maria, a couple shaky moments, but again, considering maybe his form entering that game, not bad. And Trauco wasn't challenged too much, but on the other hand, I think a much better performance from him defensively, especially because Arturo Vidal was kind of making runs on that side too, so it wasn't really easy for Trauco to handle multiple players trying to run at him, because you could kind of see that Chile initially were like, okay, we got to exploit Trauco, but it wasn't working, and then pretty much all their attacking ideas kind of faded away. It was a solid performance. They did get a lot of chances created. They heavily outchanced Chile just in terms of the quality opportunities they generated. If you look at expected goals, 2.5 compared to 1.2 for Chile, which is kind of high, but two of those chances were point blank and they ended up shooting them wide. Other than that, not really a lot generated for Chile. So I think Peru definitely deserved it based on the underlying numbers, based on the performance we saw. They did deserve to win that game 3-0. Although I will say that this also plagued them in the U.S. game. They were very hesitant around the box to shoot because they could have been up 3-0 at halftime. Even if you take away Rui Diaz's chances, there were some quality opportunities for Carrillo to shoot, for Flores to shoot, even Cueva to have a hit or two, and they didn't take them. And I think that was something that really hurt them at the World Cup as well, especially against Denmark. So they have to work on that. They have to be more willing to shoot on sight when they have the opportunities to do that, because if they don't, which I kind of think you saw against the U.S., it can come back to haunt you, because they outshot the U.S. 14-5 in that game and ended up tying 1-1 and controlled large portions of that match. So, you can get away with it against Chile when they don't play so well. You can't get away with it against the U.S., who I think defended very, very valiantly in that game.
Now, the funniest part of the game, back to the Trauco or Vincula thing, the funniest part of that game was when Junior Fernandez thought he could beat Vincula in speed. That was the funniest part of the entire game.
That's so true. That's very true. I forgot about that, actually, because
that was the funniest part of the whole game.
100% it was. And you could kind of see that as he kept running at him, I'm talking about Fernandez, of course, his teammates were kind of looking at him like, dude, what are you doing? Like, why are you even bothering with this? Like, I could see Vidal kind of chirping instructions at him, like, no, that's not what you do. You're supposed to don't hug the touchline because he's just going to take the ball away from you. And that happened every single time. I actually think Fernandez's best chances came when he was playing centrally a little bit more, because out wide, Advíncula was shutting him and everybody else down. I mean, what else is new? Although in the 45 minutes against the U.S. wasn't so great. But yeah, that was hilarious.
All right, well, I think we should answer the questions because we've got quite a lot. We've kind of briefly answered some, so you can read those questions, and then the ones I answered, you can just skip, or you can answer them yourself. But as long as you read the names, that's the important part, because
sure.
we gotta give everyone their attention, the attention they deserve. And after that, we can talk about if we have some time, we can talk about some Peruvian transfer rumors. There's quite a few actually.
Yes, very, very much so. Looking forward to that if we have time. But we'll get into the questions first. The first one is from @mucho_trabajo. My father has a theory that Ricardo Gareca made all of those changes, talking about the U.S. game, because media folk were complaining that he uses the same guys all the time, like as a way to shut them up. Have you heard these media complaints, and is his theory out of thin air? I've definitely heard these media complaints. A few of us on the podcast have complained about this. I don't think it's that wild of a theory, although I don't know about you, Brian. I don't think he necessarily did this like to spite the media. Maybe part of it, but I think he saw the U.S. was going to make 8 changes of their own and thought, hey, why not? Let's kind of hit 2 birds with one stone here. Maybe rub one in a little bit and also give opportunities to players and see if maybe these guys are worthy of more minutes. What do you think?
I don't think the theory is far-fetched in any way, but I think it had more to do with the Gareca seeing who stays and who goes. because he doesn't get a chance to play the backups much because it has to be said our squad, bar Galese, is really not that injury prone, which is a very good thing. And I think that even when Hermeto Rodriguez was there, well, he wasn't. He made a lot of matches, but now we know how injury prone he is at club level. So, but anyways, I think that I want to say that he did it to see who stays and who goes to Copa America because he realized this is his chance. He realized he doesn't have to win all the friendlies because they're irrelevant, really. They're just a test, an experiment. And I think that you could make the argument that Peru played the full squad. They would have torn apart the USA. But I think that this is a very much needed result and performance to bring us back to reality of our depth. Because, there's depth in some positions, others not so much. Like left back, Youtoone's backup. Well, Youtoone's backup, there is depth. We're just picking the wrong players, I think.
Yes.
But that's a topic for later.
Yeah, 100%. I will say, though, that in terms of, like, giving those players opportunities, you have to give them more than one start, right? Like, I think it's really unfair. I mean, it's difficult at the international level because you have so few games, you have so few friendlies. But if you expect a player to really thrive in one game and one game alone, especially someone who's not experienced at that level, then you're going to be disappointed every time. I feel like as Peruvians, we expect instant results, and when we don't see it, we get frustrated and or pissed off at whoever it may happen to be that lets us down, which I think is very unfair. We had to have a bit of patience in that regard, but with the international game, it's kind of hard to wait for these players. You kind of got to say, all right, it's now or never. Throw them into the deep end and see what you can get. So Mucho_Trabajo asked us another follow-up. How much of a role did Gareca have regarding choosing opposition and location for these friendlies? I don't know where, but I heard he was upset that his team, I guess his coaching staff, didn't have much say. Do you think he would have chosen different location and opposition to try out new players? So what I think he's referring to are actually the games from September. He was actually a little bit frustrated that they had to go to Europe. Not so much with the opposition, but the fact that they had to travel in September when players maybe necessarily weren't up to full speed. That was his big issue. And he was also, I believe this was going to happen, but they were also planning on scheduling more US-based friendlies in November before Gareca said, no, I want to play in Peru, one in Lima, one in the provinces. So I think that's kind of what he's referring to in that regard. He didn't have any problems with October. It was September and then the November window. So Kevin Montalvan at K Montalvan 7 asking us, difference in quality aside, did the subs maintain the playing? Brian, you can go this one first.
Sorry, repeat. It cut out when you were reading the question. Repeat it for me, please.
So difference in quality aside, did the subs maintain the same playing style? Do you agree or disagree with that?
I want to say yes. I think it's a really hard question. I have to say, because it's hard to tell because you can see they were trying to play, but there was just players with a lacking of confidence in the USA game, and they were like you can see they were trying, but the quality was just missing. I know that's kind of not what the question asked me to say, but I don't know what else to say. It's a really tough question, I have to say, and I think that the style of play was all right, not all right, but it was the same as before, just with different players. I mean, Hurtado, you can see he didn't really fit the Cueva role. So even if he's played as a 10 before and he's done it well, he doesn't really fit the Cueva role. I think Cueva's a player with a lot more flair, whereas Hurtado is more of a goal scorer, if you understand me.
And he's also more of a dribbler. Well, maybe not more of a dribbler, but someone who's more right side heavy. Cueva's more left side heavy when it comes to drifting out wide. That's the other big difference with them. In terms of the playing style, I think it also depends what you mean by the playing style. If you're talking about the exact same characteristics, then no, I don't think they did, because Peña wasn't really making a lot of progressive passes in the Yotun role, which, as I mentioned, is not really his style. They were more right side heavy than left side heavy because Nilson Loyola was not as obviously qualified to play in sort of a ball-playing fullback role like Trauco is. Obviously, Cueva wasn't starting, so there wasn't more of a reliance on the left flank. Hurtado is more right-footed, so therefore he went more to the right. But you also saw Hurtado at times, because Peña didn't really have much of an idea of how he was supposed to play. Hurtado was dropping deep. Flores was also coming inside a lot as well. And I think you maybe saw a little bit of a disjointed play there for about 10, 15 minutes in the first half. So I don't think the playing style was necessarily exactly the same. But as you said, Brian, I think that there was an effort to try, but it just didn't really come off that way. So moving on to Nardino's question at Nard Chapo, is the MLS level challenging enough for Peruvian players? Why do we see players like Rui Diaz score so much for Seattle, then seemingly disappear for the national team? Also, Yotun being the best player on his team in Orlando, but simply a role player for Peru. So lots to pick apart with that. I'll just say Yotun is not a role player for Peru. He's actually one of the more important players. And I think you saw that after he came on against the U.S., how much more in control the team was when he was out there. And when he doesn't play well, if you were to go to the contrast, the team really struggles, as we saw at the World Cup, as we saw in September. So he's not a role player at all for Peru. He's actually probably, you could argue, their most important player in a lot of ways. And with Rui Diaz, scored a lot in Mexico for a team that maybe didn't have necessarily the talent level of the bigger clubs like Tigres or America. Also a very clinical finisher when you compare goals to expected goals. But when it comes to the international level, you don't have as big of a sample size, and therefore you might see more inconsistencies with those numbers. But I think it also depends the kind of player you're talking about in terms of the MLS level. Someone like Andy Polo, which he talks about in his follow-up question, maybe yes, I think it's challenging enough for someone like Alexi Gomez, possibly. Rui Diaz, no, because I think if Rui Diaz was even a year or two younger, he would have been off to Europe at 25, 26 years old, and he maybe hit this level earlier. I think for some players, much like with anybody at any sort of level, it all depends on the player's situation and the player's talent level. If you have anything to follow up on that, Brian, you can go ahead.
Well, we've already talked about the styles before, but I also think that Rui Diaz needs to be consistently playing to get goals, because I think he's a player that you really need to understand the movements of. And I feel like the Peruvian national players, he's had some shockers in the national team. Let's not pretend he hasn't. But at the same time, when I watch Seattle, I watch Svensson perfectly place the balls into Rui Diaz. And I think that that's an important thing. You got to really – it took him a while to get going at Seattle. But once Svensson and Lodeiro understood his movements, he's having a stormer. I mean, he's moving easily past into space, past defenses. And that's very important for Rui Diaz. Now, at the national team, I feel like he needs to play more consistently, because I feel like Yotun and maybe not Cueva, I feel like Yotun doesn't understand his movements as much as he should. And I feel like that's because of the lack of playing time they've had together. Even at La U, they worked together, because Yotun was always at Cristal, and not even that, he was also left back. So I think this is definitely an interesting case. But this is definitely one of the most debated topics in Peru. Why doesn't he do well for the national team? But I don't think you can criticize him in the same vein as Pizarro, because Pizarro was one of the best players in Europe, one of the best forwards in Europe. Rui Diaz is just one of the best forwards in North America, which is different. So I don't think he should be criticized as much. I think he should be given some slack at times. It's disappointing that he doesn't do as well for Peru, but there's some inconveniences. Not everyone's going to perform at every time. And like I said, since he's not one of the best players in Europe, I don't think we can blame him.
Completely agree with that, but I'm going to go off on one of the other Rui Diaz questions and really kind of take a shot at the opposition side. But anyways, on to Nardino's follow-up. What should we make of Andy Polo's impressive performance against the U.S.? Is it a sign of good things to come, or is his play more suited to play in MLS or North America? Brian?
I'll go first. Yeah, I'll go first.
Do you understand this?
Yeah, I wanted to go first. I would say it's a sign of good things to come, because Polo, for the longest time, it wasn't this talent that that really hurt him. It was his mentality, and he was just a scared player with no confidence. But at Portland, I'm seeing him drive forward a lot. I mean, sure, he's not getting as much reward, but I think the reward is due to come at some moment, because Polo, he showed a really good performance the other day, and I think North America is his peak personally. But I think at Portland, he's showing a lot better mentality than he was at his previous clubs. And I would actually tip him, if he went back to Monarcas now, he would actually do better than he did last time. That's just my personal opinion. What do you think, Peter?
No, I definitely agree with that. I think there are definitely still some inconsistencies with Polo. I think his final ball was still a bit lacking against the U.S. I think there were times when he could have played in a cross earlier, or maybe, say, shoot earlier. But again, he's another player, much like Edison Flores, who I think plays better when he is full of confidence. And I think the fact that he was given the start against the U.S. in the country that he plays his club football in was a huge motivator for him. And he took the opportunity. Kudos to him, because beforehand, he was disappointing a lot of people. So the fact that he was able to rebound and really take the game, by the scruff of the neck and just run at Ben Sweat repeatedly was really fun to see, because as we have seen Brian many times, he has been more of a cautious player when he first started out at Monarcas. Not so much anymore. He's maybe taking a little more of an impetus to actually play like an attacker should. Moving on to Max Michael Inga at Max Futbolero. Considering our center back depth, does Alexander Cayens deserve or get another call-up? I think so. It would be harsh to cut him from the November friendlies after one appearance. In a word, I agree. Brian, what do you think?
I agree too. But the problem with Cayens is there's just too much center back depth. And in my opinion, there's one center back in the Peruvian league that is better than him, and that is Paulo Fuentes, who is on radar. So it'll be harsh, yes, and I think he should be given more of an opportunity and shouldn't just be looked at for this just one game for the reasons I mentioned earlier. But I think Paulo Fuentes is the better player. I think that maybe not Ramos, but I think that maybe one could be cut on the national team. Maybe Santa Maria, if he keeps performing poorly. I mean, Santa Maria objectively is a better player than Cayens, but we'll see. We'll see how it pans out. I think Paulo Fuentes is definitely the next center back who's going to get in the national team, because he's just massive.
Yeah, definitely. And he's still quite young too. You have to keep in mind, and he's been getting regular minutes at a club like Melgar that's been obviously competing for titles and whatnot. And I think that if they end up winning the Clausura, and maybe even, I mean, obviously it's possible if they win the Clausura but win the league, you never know. Maybe he gets a call up for March, right? It's very possible. So Max with a follow-up, and he's tugging at my heartstrings with this one. I think we should still give Raul Ruidiaz more time, November games minimum, but when is it time to get worried? The March friendlies, he suggests. And I would say yes, as long as the team and the attack is still playing to his strengths, because for the first time since he has been with the national team, we finally saw a Peru team that actually was tailor-made for Ruidiaz. Low crosses, through balls, latching onto those runs that he makes. He was getting actually quite involved in the build-up a lot of times, especially against Chile. I think we have to give him a little bit of slack against the U.S. because it must be said, Aaron Long and Cameron Carter-Vickers were absolutely immense in this game. They were snuffing out any sort of through ball or cross coming into the box. And obviously, Ruidiaz being as short as he is, it was quite difficult for him. I don't understand the Peruvian mentality of he has one bad game and that's it. We should toss him aside, find someone different. It goes back to the theory of we want instant results, and when we don't get it, we get frustrated and we just disregard everything. Ruidiaz is a quality player. He is the best finisher we have in this squad. Yes, he missed a couple of great chances against Chile. That's going to happen. In an international setting, you have such a small sample size, you end up having things more magnified, and sometimes the numbers are out of whack. He's eventually going to come good if those chances are there. Because as I wrote in my takeaways, and you can check them out on the website on the Peruvian Waltz, if he wasn't getting scoring opportunities, that would be worrying. But he is, and therefore we should calm down for at least another few games until we actually start properly getting carried away on whether Ruidiaz is the answer. What do you think, Brian?
Well, I've already answered my takes on this, so I think we just go to the next question.
True, forgot about that. Okay, so Abel Gamarra at Abelanda81. Who are the options to replace Loyola as Trauco's backup? Players like Santillán, Vasquez, Cespedes, or aim for the future with Lopez from Cristal, who is a left back by trade and in the under-20s. Brian, you threw out suggestions there, but if you want to come out and maybe talk about the Lopez thing, you can. I actually think Lopez might be the answer, at least for the long term. But I'm not sure if his best position is left back or as a winger. I think right now playing as a winger is ideal. I will say that he has been a lot more disciplined with his positioning with Cristal over the last few games since he got called up in September. So maybe that is the answer. And we have to see how he does at the Sudamericano Sub-20 as well. Because if he does well as a left back and he starts as a left back, then yeah, I'd say give him a shot. Because Loyola is definitely not taking that backup left back spot and running away with it. So, Brian, I mean, if you want to talk about Lopez, you may, or we can also move on.
Oh, wait, that wasn't the whole question. Finish reading it.
What do you mean? That was the whole question.
What about when he said Arias is my preferred choice? You didn't read that part.
No, but that's a separate question.
Oh, okay, I made a mistake. You can edit that out. I just ruined the whole live show. I'm sorry. Okay, no. I also mentioned this earlier. Yeah, Vasquez is an option. He's not exactly young, but he's an option for now. And I think he's a lot defensively better than Loyola. And I don't think he'd be as scared. Maybe offensively he won't offer much, and he won't be as defensively sound as Aldo Corso was in the right back. But I think that I think that what we have to do is try we have, like I said, we have 6 or 7 friendlies left. Try a few left backs and then see what sticks. So that's what I think, because there's really not much better. But I think Loyola is proven such a low level in recent times that we have to try something new, because like I said, I think even Cosillo would be better than Loyola at this point, and I don't rate Cosillo at all. So that's how bad the situation has gone. So we really got to try something and see what sticks. We got to try the best remaining left backs, and then hope one of them will perform like Aldo Corso did.
Yeah, fair enough. I would definitely agree with that.
And speaking of Corso, I don't think he'll be back on the national team soon. Like, maybe he'll be back, but he's not exactly performing well for La U. Since his injury, he's not been the same player. So the right back backup has to be another position to worry about. It's not just the left back. So
yeah, well, but there's still also time. So
yeah, he's also getting up there with age. So I don't think he'll be here around for the whole cycle.
Well, I think he still could, because he's 28 now, 32 for the World Cup. I think by then he'd still be fine. Maybe not as fast, but still a very good player, certainly.
Yeah, but he's not at Advíncula. He's playing in the Peruvian league, which I know doesn't say much, but Advíncula is going to stick around because he's one of the best players we have. Corso is a player who is very tactical, and if he doesn't perform better for La U, then I'm going to start worrying a little bit, because he's been very poor as of late.
Yeah, but he could always come back, right? That's the good news. So on to the question that you, I am sure, are desperate to answer and talk about, Brian. Abel Gamarra again asking us, Sergio Peña failed to control the game for us. Is he the player to replace Yoshi, or do we need to look for other options like Alexis Arias, Brian's candidate, or Jairo Concha? So seeing as how he mentioned you by name, Brian, and I know you talked about this earlier, if you want to elaborate, you may.
Well, Alexis Arias is a choice that if he does well, then he'll stick, because, I mean, he's kind of like Loyola in the sense that he was out of his depth in the Libertadores, in the Panamericanos, but I feel like he's matured since both of those moments. Maybe not the Libertadores, but I feel like he's definitely matured since the Panamericanos, and he needs to be given a chance, because Arias is a great player and all, but he's more a Peña than a Yotun, in my opinion. He's better dribbling, and he's not the ideal player to replace Yotun, and he's also a bit older than Arias. Arias has a lot of potential to play around. Arce, not as much. Yeah. Concha, you definitely have to give a chance at some point, but we got to see how he does in the U20s. I want to see him develop a little more first before burning him out potentially. Yeah. So I think that he's definitely one of the candidates for the future, but not yet. And what was the other player you mentioned? Oh, Peña, right. You already know what I think of Peña. I said I've never really rated him as much. So, yeah, Peter, you can give your thoughts on this now.
Well, I do agree with the Concha parts and also Arias as well. I mean, it wouldn't hurt. The thing with Concha is I think since he went away with the under-20s to Russia. You can see he's come back, and maybe this has coincided with San Martin maybe not being in the greatest of form, but you can see he's not, he's really not trying to do the simple things anymore. He's trying to be too elaborate now, and I guess that kind of comes with being a young player and whatnot. But you kind of hope that maybe once he goes away to the under-20s, maybe then that'll help right his path again. But still a candidate for me for the future because he's got tons and tons of talent. And unlike Yotun, Concha is more of a dribbler as well. So maybe, and he's also more familiar to playing in that role compared to Peña. So maybe that could also give Peru a different look in that way. Another name I'll throw out there, which I believe Abel has thrown out there before, and I do agree with this, Jesus Pretel as well. I think he could actually be a candidate for the future. And he's actually had a good season with San Martin as well. And I would be absolutely shocked if he doesn't go back to Cristal for next season to help them with the Libertadores and to manage all those extra competitions too. And yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts. If you want to have a follow-up, Brian, I guess you
those are the questions?
Those are all the questions.
All right, I guess we have 10 minutes, so I guess we can talk about some of the transfer rumors. There's 3 that I want to highlight. Advíncula to Atletico Madrid, which I don't know how true it is. I don't know the certainty of it, but it's definitely one that we should talk about anyhow. Ro Fernandez to the MLS, and Kevin Quevedo to the MLS, which you just brought up in the group earlier today, Peter. So let's talk about the big one first. Advíncula to Atletico Madrid. Apparently, if Santiago Arias goes to Napoli or elsewhere, then Advíncula will join Atletico Madrid, which I kind of believe anyways. Because I think he's the sort of player that can thrive under Simeone because he's defensively strong and he's good offensively as well. And I think Simeone likes balanced fullbacks, so I think that's a good choice for him. The thing is, we gotta see if he can maintain the season with Rayo Vallecano, which I think he definitely can. He showed in the past he has the quality to. His past few campaigns with all of his clubs have been good. Even with Tigres, when he's come on, he's been good. It's kind of funny looking at it now that he's deemed not good enough for Tigres, but Atletico Madrid wants him. So that's the funniest part of all. Hashtag just Tuca Ferretti things. All right, Peter. Well, what do you think?
I don't think there's a more fitting player-coach relationship that could possibly happen than Lucho and El Cholo. I think that would just be a match made in heaven. I think. In terms of the probability of it happening, I'd maybe give it 40 or 50% because, look, you also have to keep in mind the rumor broke during the international window. That's when a lot of papers try to sell their column inches. But the actual story is legitimate because they are looking to sign a replacement if Santiago Arias goes to Napoli, which is actually looking quite likely. And as we know, Juan Fran is getting up there in age. He's lost a little bit of pace. Advíncula can obviously be a bit of an upgrade in that regard. So it's probable. He is on loan at Rayo Vallecano. All Atletico would have to do is go to Tigres and say, okay, here's the transfer fee. They kind of come to an agreement with Rayo possibly, and then the move happens. I think it could happen in January, but often it happening in the summer.
Yeah, I think the summer's more likely. But it depends on Santiago Arias goes to Napoli because they're going to need an emergency right back. And I think emergency situations are never good, but I think in that situation I can accept it because, if they have no other good right back to compete for the league, I think Amico is the chosen one for that scenario. Yeah. So, yeah, the next one is Raúl Fernandez to the MLS, who has actually already been in the MLS. And at one point when he was there, he was named the best player in the league in the month. Well, I think it was player of the month, rather, which is obviously the best player of the league in the month. But Fernandez, he's getting back to his best. I don't think he's going to be in the national team anytime soon. And I think some people jumped to conclusions when he got that red card against Ayacucho. And I definitely don't think he's a starter for Low. I think better Subsuka's maybe he's not better, but I think he's a better choice for now because he's shown maturity and he's definitely one. If Low stay up, he's definitely the choice for the future. Now, Low, what they want is to stay up, of course. But I think if Fernando wants to go to the MLS, it's his choice, and I think that is I think that he do want the MLS again, to be honest, because I think he's doing well in the league, and when he has played, aside from that red card against Ayacucho, which lost from the starting spot. But yeah, I still question how serious he is at this point because a decline like that doesn't happen that that much. Like, he doesn't decline so much. And so there's been theories that, like, he's won his money in the MLS and he's gone back to Peru to just chill out. But I think that I don't know how certain those theories are. You can't really make a truth of it. But the point is he's declined and he's trying to get back to his best. That's the point we're trying to make.
Yeah, I don't have anything else really to say other than I think he'd be a good addition for a team. The quality of goalkeeping has gone down significantly in MLS since he left. So I'm sure he would instantly become one of the better leagues or goalkeepers in the league if he were to return. I'll say that.
I would like him to go. I don't know what club he's linked to. I didn't really look into it, but I think that FC Dallas would be cool because it would be like a comeback, and he would definitely start because I don't know if he's a fan favorite, but the club definitely recognizes him. So I think he was in the MLS All-Star, remember, and he got to play against Roma in that match as a starter as well.
Yep.
So not like Yotun, where Yotun was picked, but he wasn't starting. No, Fernandez was the starting keeper in that MLS All-Star game in 2013.
Yep.
So, yeah, the last one is Quevedo to MLS, which Peter, you can talk about this one because you're the one who broke it out to me. So, what do you think? What clubs are linked and if revealed, and what do you think of the move?
Well, also Alder Fuentes is also linked to MLS as well. He was linked to Colón in Argentina in August, LAFC in August as well, and it looks like LAFC is in for him again for January. So it's both Alianza players who could actually be leaving. And it sounds, based on the report, that the club is kind of resigned to losing them when the window opens. Quevedo is linked to New York City FC, where he played obviously with David Villa. He would be coached by Pep Guardiola's longtime assistant, Dome Torrent. So I think it would be a good move for him. I think for both players, really, at this point in their careers, because they're 20 and 21 respectively, it would be excellent for them to go abroad and to test themselves and to get that next level of development. Quevedo especially because I think, as you know, much like with Alexi Gomez when he was in Peru, dealt with attitude issues as well when he was abroad. So you kind of wonder if maybe the move could help him and maybe, right the ship in some ways, maybe get him focused. Maybe he feels like he's potentially a bit of a big shot in Peru because he's in his comfort zone. So maybe going outside that comfort zone can help him. And with Fuentes, I think Fuentes going to a team like LAFC would be fantastic for him because they're more of a possession-based team. And I think Fuentes could actually really thrive in that. Whereas obviously at Alianza, more counterattacking, more direct. And if you look at the numbers and you just look at him play, a very good progressive passer of the ball when he has to do it. So I would be interested in seeing that for sure.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. I have more faith in Quevedo on the MLS than I do Gomez because I think Quevedo is more tactically disciplined than Gomez. Not that's saying much, but he's more tactically disciplined. So he's least worst, I guess you could say. But anyways, I guess we could end the pod here. So thank you for listening. My name is Brian. My Twitter handle is B_Bert98. Peter, what is yours?
Almost forgot your name. My Twitter handle is @GalindoPW, and you can follow the show at Peru Waltz, and don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube.
Well, thank you for listening, and that'll be it. We'll be back next week, hopefully on the Tuesday again. I don't remember if we did Wednesday last week. I think we did, but hopefully we did. Hopefully we did on the Tuesday again. This week was kind of hard, and this is the first time we've done it on a Thursday. So, yeah, I'm hoping we get back to the Tuesdays. But anyways, that is enough. Thank you for listening, and that'll be it. We're signing off.